Hey everybody, Sam BB. Today is Tuesday, August 7th, 2018. My name is Barb Hammer, and today I want to do a follow-up video on Robert Reich. I did one on Sunday, August 5th, about him and about a video he did on Trump, the GOP, and how many people in that circle admire Ayn Rand. And then Scott Creighton, American Everyman, on the Church Dog 42 channel, did a video about Robert Reich as well. And he went into in-depth about Robert Reich's background and how he sort of has some beginnings in the right and provided left cover for Bill Clinton's getting NAFTA pushed through. And then they covered up the devastation that resulted from NAFTA. So today I want to get into a darker aspect of Robert Reich. And so I'm going to use a term, authoritarian neoliberalism or neoliberal authoritarianism. So in my earlier video about Robert Reich, I kind of jokingly used this video, this Nazi march from a 1970s movie, and it had all this imagery, Nazi Third Reich imagery. And I made a joke playing a little bit on Robert Reich's last name and sort of comparing it to the Third Reich, the Nazis' Third Reich. But afterward, I realized it's not really a joke. Especially after I watched Scott's video, and then I thought about some of the things I had in mind about Robert Reich. I realized that Robert Reich is really part of this authoritarian neoliberalism that we're starting to see. And I'm going to use that term a lot more than just neoliberalism. So Robert Reich, he is sort of enabling this new authoritarianism that we're seeing. And but first I'm going to talk about how Robert Reich talks. So he is from the professional class, and he talks a lot like Max Kaiser from RT's Kaiser Report, about whom I did a video earlier. So I'm going to show Max. Let me find a better picture of Max here. So this is my video I did about Max Kaiser and the Kaiser Report. And so I just noticed some similarities in the way Robert Reich talks. Oops. Hang on. Stop that. There we go. So Robert Reich and Max Kaiser, they have a similar way of talking. So Robert Reich is a neoliberal, and Max Kaiser is a libertarian, the way he talks. But it's very similar the way they both talk. So they're all about free markets and open borders. That's another thing. That's neoliberalism. Those things are neoliberal. And Max Kaiser, in one of his videos that I covered, he is always talking about he talks a lot about competition and innovation and high tech. And he was very condescending to workers, talking about how workers in a country, when there's no competition from labor coming in from outside, from immigrants or undocumented workers. So he says that workers get lazy. And that's kind of the way Robert Reich talks. He's very condescending. He's always talking about how workers in the U.S. have to upgrade their skills and education and to compete. So it's all about keeping companies competitive, meaning keeping wages low, really. Keeping wages low, cheap labor, so the companies can remain profitable. So they both talk a lot about high tech, how tech's the way to go, and so workers have to be better educated. But they fail to acknowledge that the overwhelming majority of the economy is really not high tech. It's basic services and manufacturing. So it's kind of a myth, this whole high tech thing, I think. I mean, tech is an important part of the economy, but they're kind of dismissing a lot of the basic services and products that are put out there. So Max Kaiser and Robert Reich both have this way of speaking that you'll hear from the professional class. It's very condescending, talking to the overwhelming majority of people, ordinary workers, working class, and it's all about the meritocracy. So in that mindset, you get what you deserve. And so if you're not as well educated, if you haven't achieved a lot, well, that's too bad. That's too bad if you're poor. And that's the way they talk to ordinary people. It's just too bad if you just don't have that education and you haven't achieved all this and these things in your life. And it reminds me so much of the way my own sister talks. My own sister, so I grew up as one of 4 children. I was the youngest. And so we had fairly humble beginnings. So we were middle class, lower middle class maybe. So my dad he had a small business. He worked on electric motors and he sold electric motors, and he was a partner in a small business. He never made a lot of money. And then my mom, she went back to work as a secretary or office manager when I started second grade, since I was the youngest. So once I was in school, then she went back to work. And it was very important to my parents that we all get college educations, the baby boom. That was the emphasis, is get a college education. So they made sure that all 4 of us kids got at least a bachelor's degree. And the elder of my 2 sisters, she got, her degree was in anthropology, and then she went into social work after she got out of college. And it's a hard, thankless job. So it wasn't her cup of tea, and she was more ambitious. So then she went back to school and she got her master's in business administration. And then she started working as a budget director for different university libraries. So she worked for 3 different university libraries as budget director. And so she was getting very well paid. She has retired. And so she did very well. And she has really forgotten where we've come from and our roots. So that's this professional class way of speaking. It's very condescending. And so Robert Reich in the Democratic Party has he's part of this movement of the Democratic Party to kind of pay lip service to the working class and the problems in the economy. But he is part of the problem with the Democratic Party forgetting the working class, and they started to push identity politics that appeals to the sensibilities of the professional class. So Robert Reich is part of the problem that is mentioned in writer Thomas Frank's book. So this is Thomas Frank, just so you know what he looks like. And he actually, I didn't realize this, he got his bachelor's degree from the University of Virginia. He's from Missouri, but so I'm from Virginia, so I thought that was interesting. Anyway, he wrote this book called Listen Liberal, very good book. I haven't read it yet, but I've heard good things, and it's been talked a lot about. So he wrote another book criticizing people who voted Republican. It was called What's the Matter with Kansas, and how Republican voters vote against their interests. And then, so this is the only book that Thomas Frank has written where he's been critical of the Democratic Party. And so it's all about how the Democratic Party has abandoned its working class roots and has started appealing to the professional class. And So they have a little summary here. Okay, so it is the widespread belief. Here, let me see if I hide. Hang on. See if I can highlight this. So, yeah. It is a widespread belief among liberals that if only Democrats can continue to dominate national elections, if only those awful Republicans are beaten into submission, the country will be on the right course. But this is to fundamentally misunderstand the modern Democratic Party. Drawing on years of research and firsthand reporting, Frank points out that the Democrats have done little to advance traditional liberal goals, expanding opportunity, fighting for social justice, and ensuring that workers get a fair deal. Indeed, they have scarcely dented the free market consensus at all. This is not for lack of opportunity. Democrats have occupied the White House for 16 of the last 24 years, and yet the decline of the middle class has only accelerated. Wall Street gets its bailouts, wages keep falling, and the free trade deals keep coming. So Frank lays bare the essence of the Democratic Party's philosophy and how it has changed over the years. A form of corporate and cultural elitism has largely eclipsed the party's old working class commitment, he finds. For certain favored groups, this has meant prosperity, but for the nation as a whole, it is a one-way ticket into the abyss of inequality. So this book came out, I think, in 2016. 2015 or 2016. So in time for the elections. So Thomas Frank really predicted that the Democrats were likely to lose the presidential election in 2016. So he got a lot of attention in 2016 because of the Bernie Sanders movement supposedly trying to move the Democratic Party back to its working class roots. And so this kind of outlines the failures of Robert Reich, really, and his involvement in the Democratic Party. There was a political economist from Scotland who teaches at Brown University, which is an Ivy League school. And he also predicted that Donald Trump would win because for the very same reasons that the government, the Democratic Party, and Republican Party, they've abandoned the working class. And so a lot of the working class, a lot of voters voted for Trump because Trump, to them, represented a break from that. And so Trump ran as a populist. And so Mark Blythe had predicted Trump's win. Now, let's see. I want to go to... So the other thing that got me thinking was I had glanced at Robert Reich's videos, and I had looked at his tweets. Now, the problem with Robert Reich, he's part of this Democratic Party resistance. It's a fake resistance. Sometimes people jokingly call it the muck resistance. The muck resistance as a McDonald's, because it's fake. And so Robert Reich, he's sort of nominally resisting what Donald Trump is representing, but Donald Trump isn't necessarily Donald Trump deserves a lot of criticism. He's the president, and he's pushed through a lot of terrible policies and gotten more tax cuts for the rich. So Robert Reich, in his videos, he's really obsessed with Trump. And this is what the Democratic Party wants everybody to be focused on, is Donald Trump is the problem. Donald Trump is the only problem. So here are all of his videos, Robert Reich's videos, and you can see... I'm trying to get back to the first ones. So he's done this, he's put these videos out for a couple of years, I think. Yeah, 3 years. Okay. So, yeah. So when it looked like, okay, Trump. Okay, there's Trump. Yeah. There are a lot of videos on Trump. And so when Trump got elected, that's when he really stepped up the hysteria about Trump. Yeah, there's Trump. Trump's war against the press, that's the fake press, really. Trump syndromes, yeah. Trump. There's more Trump here. Trump. So the emphasis is that Trump is the problem, but I'm going to argue that actually the Democrats and people like Robert Reich, they have created this problem, and so they're sort of complicit in what's going on, I would say. And it's almost like it's almost like Robert Reich, he's a collaborator with what's going on in the Trump administration. He's enabled this. He has, so Robert Reich, yeah, so he says, is Donald Trump a traitor? Robert Reich, he promotes this hysteria about Russia, and there was foreign interference that got Trump elected, and Trump is a puppet, a Russian puppet, a Putin puppet. I think there was a video. I'm trying to see. Yeah, he does. Yeah, is Trump a traitor? Oh, yeah, there's the picture of Putin there. So, yeah, how to prevent future Trump. So it's all about Trump is the problem. But I'm going to argue that actually Robert Reich wants this all to happen, really. He's wanted Trump to happen. And that is the thing. The Democrats, they didn't want somebody like Bernie Sanders to be president. So they're perfectly fine with Trump being president, but they like to be hysterical about Trump as being the problem. And I'm going to say that actually Robert Reich, he's creating this sort of enabling this authoritarian neoliberalism. So we're seeing, yeah, here he's talking about, he complains, the things that he criticizes Trump for are the exact same things that Bill Clinton and Barack Obama had done. So here's more about Russian meddling. Yeah, so he promotes this myth, this lie that the Russians have installed Trump, and the Trump campaign and administration are collaborating with the Russians. Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to argue that it's like Robert Reich thinks he doth protest too much. And I think Robert Reich, he wants the whole system to cave in, really. I'm going to argue that he wants the system seems to be collapsing because there's so much corruption and authoritarianism taking over. But this is what Democrats like Robert Reich, they don't want to admit any mistakes. They want this to happen. And let's see what else I got here. I've forgotten. So, yeah. And it reminds me, there was actually a quote. I saw something, Tony Blair had said something to the effect that he would rather lose than admit that the Labour Party in the UK had to move to the left or embrace leftist values. So I think this is the same thing with the Democratic Party and Robert Reich, that they're sort of enabling this increasing authoritarianism that we're seeing. And there's actually, yeah. So there's this, the thing with, I remember, So I'm going to argue, okay, the Gilded Age. So the Gilded Age has been cited as the earlier era of neoliberalism, where you saw staggering profits for the rich and poverty and misery for the working classes. And then there was a cycle from the 1860s to the Great Depression in the 1930s of cascading economic crises. Now, I'm arguing that there's actually this era of neoliberalism, we're seeing authoritarianism. And that's what's different from the Gilded Age. So now we're seeing increasing authoritarianism, and that is coming from the hysteria over Russia. And so you combine neoliberalism with neoMcCarthyism. This hysteria over Russia and Trump is a new era of McCarthyism. So I'm arguing this is the difference between the Gilded Age and neoliberalism now, is that we're going to see political crises. And they're going to use these political crises like, oh no, Hillary Clinton didn't get elected. It's Donald Trump who's president. Oh no, this is a political crisis. So this is an excuse to suppress freedoms like freedom of speech. And I'm going to bring in the recent shutting down of Alex Jones and InfoWars, that this is part of this increasing authoritarianism in reaction to the neoMcCarthyism. So the timing of this is very interesting. So I've been warned that we're going to see this sort of thing because of the midterms. So the Democrats have put so much emphasis on the midterms, and so they want to suppress any dissent. So they're using, so they're claiming like people like Alex Jones are, I think they sort of argue people like Alex Jones, any alternative media, they're like Russian agents, I guess. So this is the excuse to shut people down. So this is my whole argument. I'm going to stop just saying neoliberalism. I'm going to say authoritarian neoliberalism or neoliberal authoritarianism. And this, what's interesting is that the Russian hysteria is not just coming from people like Robert Reich and the Democratic Party. I noticed this is also coming from Thomas Frank himself. And I think I saw something. There was an article. Yeah, wait a minute. Okay, yeah. Okay, this was his Twitter page, and I found, okay. Oh, here's the quote about Blair. Yes, this is where I couldn't remember where I saw this. So I'll bring up this tweet. Okay. Oh, yeah, this is from an article written by Thomas Frank in The Guardian. Yeah, so this is highlighted. The Democrats, however, remain a mystery. We watch them hesitate. This is written by Thomas Frank. The Democrats, however, remain a mystery. We watch them hesitate at crucial moments, betray the movements that support them, and even try to suppress the leaders and ideas that generate any kind of populist electricity. Not only do they seem uninterested in doing their duty toward the middle class, but sometimes we suspect that they don't even want to win. And here in parentheses, this is more than just a suspicion, by the way. This is more than just a suspicion, by the way. As none other than Tony Blair has said, I wouldn't want to win on an old-fashioned leftist platform. Even if I thought it was the route to victory, I wouldn't take it. Yeah, that's where I'd seen that. So also the other thing, Thomas Frank, yeah, he buys into the Russian hysteria. Yeah. So on his Twitter page, he's posted this article. And I think this is his website or one that he writes on thebaffler.com. So here he's comparing Jack Abramoff, who was a lobbyist, and he was involved in a big scandal. So he was a right-wing lobbyist. Bizarre similarities between Jack Abramoff's doings in the 1980s and the current Russia-related mess. Conservatives are back to the old playbook as described 10 years ago in The Wrecking Crew. The Wrecking Crew is a book that Thomas Frank wrote about the damage that the Republicans and conservatives do. So yeah, he's citing this article, and I have this article. So as you can see, this is more how Abramov's global antics prefigure today's right-wing Russian collusion. So this is more Russian hysteria. You can see from the graphics here. Yeah, so this is more connecting the Trump administration with Russia, and that's just a lie. And connecting Trump to Putin. So this is something that Thomas Frank himself has posted. So he promotes this this lie that Russia is behind Trump, and Russia is interfering with our elections and our politics and our government. So it's really sad. Even Thomas Frank. And so Thomas Frank, he's also got, so this is his latest book, Rendezvous with Oblivion. So he's sort of talking about this collapse that I've mentioned. And yeah, so here, the Rendezvous with Oblivion, reports from a sinking society. What does a middle-class democracy look like when it comes apart? When after 40 years of economic triumph, America's winners persuade themselves that they owe nothing to the rest of the country. Yeah, so shows us a society in the late stages of disintegration, and describing the worlds of both the winners and the losers, the sprawling mansion districts, as well as the lives of fast food workers. So it's a collection of essays, but this is how they're writing about how the society and the country is collapsing, and they're just using this scenario to justify doing away with our fundamental freedoms, like freedom of speech and press. And so I'm arguing that the Democrats are complicit in all this. So they're just pushing this narrative about Russia so that they can bring about this authoritarian neoliberalism. And there's actually some interesting, so you can find this term if you do a search. There's a lot on this, a lot of literature about this, and I'm going to talk about this more. I'm never going to say just neoliberalism anymore. Or neoliberal globalization. I'm going to talk about neoliberal authoritarianism, or use the term authoritarian neoliberalism. So this is what we're seeing now, I'm thinking. So here's another article. Yeah, this article is very good. And so it traces it back to, this first started. It's not like this has suddenly happened. So it's come in stages, and it started with 9/11. Yeah, so making authoritarian neoliberalism politically inevitable. So this is what we're seeing. And it's the midterms that I think are escalating this. So you'll see this public-private partnerships. So you'll see like the big social media platforms are censoring, like YouTube is censoring, and corporatization of everyday life. And you'll see, these like Facebook has been used to spy on people. So this is the public-private partnerships that we're seeing. Yeah. Anyway, so I just wanted to touch upon this topic, but there's a lot. I'm going to talk about this more because this is very interesting. Yeah. So this is actually a academic piece, but it's not about Trump. It's just that Trump coincidentally has come along. And so they'll cite Trump. Trump is president, so it is happening under his administration, but it's not about Trump, and it's the Democrats that are pushing this too. They sort of pretend that they're opposed to Trump, but they're using this as a rationale to argue for suppression of freedom of speech and freedom of press and Second Amendment. So anyway, that's what I wanted to talk about today. That's my follow-up. So there's a darker side to Robert Reich, a much darker side to Robert Reich. And So anyway, that's all I got to say for today. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Please share this, comment, and give me a thumbs up, thumbs down. Okay, and I will talk to you again soon. Bye.